Good morning, I'm Barbara Kay, here with Susan Pertnoy. Welcome to Mosaic, Jewish Federation of Palm Beach County's weekly news magazine show. Mosaic explores Jewish topics here in the Palm Beaches and around the world.
Every 9 seconds in the United States, a woman falls victim to domestic abuse. This national problem continues to grow in scope, with 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men now affected. In our Jewish community, domestic abuse has become an issue at the core of many efforts of local organizations.
On this morning's episode of Mosaic, we'll explore this issue with a nationally renowned expert who is addressing domestic violence and sexual assault on the highest level.
We'll sit down with a professional from a domestic abuse program in the Palm Beaches who is taking on this issue in the Jewish community.
And then we'll speak with a leader from Jewish Federation's Young Women's Group about how she is bringing awareness to domestic abuse in new ways.
We'll be right back with Mosaic after this brief commercial break. We're here with Jane Randall, who is the featured speaker of No Excuse for Abuse Luncheon, and it's also International Women's Day. Jane, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. You're the foremost expert on domestic violence and sexual abuse. Can you give us some insight as to what exactly domestic violence is?
Sure. I wouldn't call me the foremost expert. I will just say that I have worked in this field for a long time in addition to my life in communication. So I've learned quite a bit from very smart people. So domestic violence is not, people think of it as a fight or
physical,
an argument,
right,
or only physical. It's a pattern of behavior. It's a pattern of intimidation, one partner over another. Power and control is generally at the basis of these relationships. And so it can range from verbal abuse, financial abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, physical violence, death. It's on a spectrum. And we talk all the time, when you first meet somebody, if somebody hit you on the first date, you wouldn't have a second date.
Right.
But it doesn't work like that. It's a process over time. And so people get really engaged in these relationships. There's love at the basis of them. And it becomes kind of this pattern that's very hard to break.
Why did you get involved with this? The billion-dollar question.
Exactly. Many people in this field are involved because they have some personal connection to it. I actually don't. My company, I worked at Liz Claiborne for many years, and we did a cause marketing program back in 1991. I wasn't even there quite yet, and it focused on domestic violence. And we did research amongst our consumers and amongst women in general. And domestic violence, remember, this is in 1991, pre-O.J. Simpson, always ranked very high on issues that were important to women and their families. And really nobody was talking about them then. I mean, truly, no one was talking. And the company started this program, and I very fortuitously, in my opinion, inherited it in 1995. And it flexed my marketing muscles, because it was really about how do you market an issue that people see as taboo, that people are uncomfortable talking about, and make it safe for people to want to talk about it. And that was
really revolutionary.
It was, and it was really, and I didn't do this, so I can give credit. That was really a lot of the thought behind getting on board of this issue very early. If Liz Claiborne would talk about it, it makes it safe. People trusted, women trusted Liz Claiborne, and if the company would talk about it, maybe that would help make it safe for others.
The statistics are so staggering about domestic abuse. You don't even realize it's 1 in 3 women.
1 in 3 or 1 in 4. I mean, it depends how you end the statement. 1 in 4 women will be impacted by domestic violence at some point in her life. 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys are sexually abused before the age of 18. It's staggering. It's horrifying. And what happens is that there's so much shame and stigma and blame that are still associated with this issue, wrongly on the victim, as opposed to the person perpetrating crime, that people don't want to talk about it. And so I guarantee that every person watching this knows somebody who's been engaged in this issue. I'm sure more than one, either directly or indirectly. But it's not okay to talk about. And yet we live in this society where, in the early 90s, people didn't talk about breast cancer either. You didn't talk about your breasts, right? Now it's totally safe. I would have a conversation with somebody, did you get your mammogram? It's not an odd question. Same of many things. My poor husband turned 50 a few years ago, and every place I knew that he had to get a colonoscopy because he was turning 50. And it became, it's an okay, very personal, but okay thing to talk about. So how do we move this out of this place of shame and stigma into a place where people are willing to talk about it and feel okay discussing the issue?
So why in 2017 is it such a hot button issue?
It's very interesting. For all the years that I've worked on it, I've always thought there would be some lightning bolt, right? Some case, something that would make everybody just start talking about it. And there were, but in segments, right? So you had Chris Brown and Rihanna, you had Penn State and the child sexual assault, you had Steubenville, more assault amongst athletes.
The priests.
The list goes on and on and on. What really changed, honestly, is people saw it on video through Ray Rice and the NFL. We all say to ourselves, well, you saw the aftermath. What did you think happened in the elevator to get to that aftermath? But people are visual. They needed to see it. And I think once they saw it, it became more real. And then, and I work with the league, and I love the league, but they admittedly mishandled that case, and it became an issue. The NFL has such a presence in our country. It has such a platform. And it became such news that people started, again, feeling okay to talk about it. That's a great way to raise, how do you talk to your kids about tough issues, right? You look at a teachable moment. So that was a teachable moment to have a conversation.
And as a result of that teachable moment, the NFL and NASCAR has hired you to consult with them and create some sort of a program for players and spouses. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. So the NFL, I was one of 4 experts that they hired to help.
It's okay, you're an expert.
My mother would kill me. 4 experts to come help them work on this issue. Because a lot of times people don't understand what's behind it, and it is very helpful to have outside perspective. And so what we do what we are doing and have done for the last number of years is work with them on first policies and then education. So we're working now on year 4 education. Every year, the NFL educates the entire league. It's about 6,000 people, so it's not just players and coaches, it's anyone from people who work on the groundskeepers to cheerleaders. Every year gets educated around these issues, and then adding some other social issues, DUI, firearm safety, etc. And I have to tell you, that is incredibly unusual. I worked at a company that did a lot on these issues. We not only looked outside at our consumer base, we looked inside at our workers. And it's a place that's an issue that I feel really strongly about. I would love to get every company in America to focus on these issues, because even if you don't do a big cause marketing program, which is fine, I'll take Bank of America because they do an amazing job. They have 100,000 people or more that work, I think, in this country. Imagine the impact, because it does go, you have this conversation, you start to talk about it at work, and then you go home and you start talking about it more.
No, it just feeds upon
itself.
Right.
So I commend, the NFL is nothing but a workplace, it just is a very high profile workplace. And so they do education for everybody once a year. And then they're also doing a lot of other things around character development and working with youth, and really have stepped up and worked with the National Hotline and this organization around sexual assault called Reliance that was formed because of the NFL's grant. So it's really, they've taken a pretty holistic approach. But here's the thing, and we know this, it's a really hard issue. People want to say, okay, what do I do? And the problem is that there's no two, let's say you suspected a friend, no 2 cases are alike. So what I always tell people, we used in our company, was recognize, respond, refer, right? So start to recognize what the signs are, respond, meaning reach out, say, are you okay? And there's information on how to do that. And then refer to the experts, because these can be life and death issues, especially if you're trying to break the relationship off. That's the most dangerous time. so go and work with experts. And the frustrating part here, and frankly, with sexual assault victims as well, is that, and this is a really hard concept, it's an easy concept to explain, but it's hard for people to internalize. The basis of these relationships or of these assaults is power and control, right? One person exerting power and control over another. So if you were to go to your friend that you thought was an abuse, are you okay? Something's wrong, and she's not ready to talk,
or doesn't want to hear it.
You have to respect that, right? You have to try and listen without judgment, and try not to say all the things you're thinking. How could you let him do this? Or he seems so nice. You have to just listen, listen without judgment. And the same is true for sexual assault victims, because we may say, you have to go report this, you have to go get a rape, all these things that they should do. But you have to respect that these people have had no control, especially in sexual assault. They've lost all control in that moment, and in domestic violence, they've lost all their control, a lot of their control. And so you have to let them guide the process to get their control back.
Well, sometimes it's impossible to get your control back, so is it ever right time for an intervention of some sort?
I think this, I don't do direct service, so that's a little bit of a harder question for me. What I'll say is, you have no idea how impactful it is for somebody who has been told that no one cares about you but me, the abuser. You're isolated from your friends and family. You can't move without permission. Whatever it is, told you're stupid. For you to just reach out and say, "Are you okay?" can actually make a huge impact on somebody who feels like nobody cares about them.
Right, it gives them permission.
And so, the control that I mean is a control over a little bit of her destiny. I'm ready now and I want to reach out, or I'm not ready, and now you've made this little path that maybe this person knows that it's okay to reach out.
Jane, you're doing remarkable work, and I really appreciate you joining us today and giving us some insight on the issue. It's really, really very, very important.
Can I raise one more thing?
One more thing.
One more quick thing. I used a lot of he and she in my language, and I just want to explain that I did that for kind of simplicity, but domestic violence crosses all socioeconomic boundaries, sexual assault as well, all socioeconomic boundaries, demographics, age, gender, sexual orientation, etc., and then can also be victims. So I just want to put that out there.
It's true.
Because it's really an important point. Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, we'll sit down with a professional from a domestic abuse program in the Palm Beaches who is taking up this issue in the Jewish community.
From empowering Jewish college students to stand up to anti-Israel activity on campus, to enabling seniors and Holocaust survivors to age with dignity, transforming, inspiring, saving, Jewish Federation of Palm Beach County is doing all of this here and around the world.
Welcome back. I'm sitting here with Sarah Walsh. You are amazing. I interviewed you 2 years ago.
Yes.
And the opening of the program, we spoke with the speaker who's going to be speaking today at No Excuse for Abuse.
Yes.
You are the outreach program director, really, for the domestic abuse people.
That's correct.
You find places for them, you help them.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a critical issue.
It is.
You know something, I was listening to her talk to Susan
Mm-hmm.
about the national impact of such an issue, and people aren't paying attention. Not enough are, anyway. Tell me, what does the Jewish Family and Children's Service do, literally, here?
Well, what we do is we evaluate clients who come through our agency who are in a domestic abuse situation. Mm-hmm. So we would usually get those referrals from the community. We also have little cards that our coalition has made, and we put in bathrooms around the community. So if a woman or a man is in need of services, they'll see these little cards that say there's no excuse for abuse, stick them in their pocket, in their purse, maybe put it in a place where they know they can find it, and then when they're ready to call, they'll call. So we would do an assessment. I would do the assessment and evaluate where that person is in their journey in terms of their domestic abuse situation. We would find counseling for them. We provide services for them, for their children. We have a food pantry. And my role is also to be a case manager in the community.
Oh, well, you do that as well?
Correct. So we would refer them to whatever services they need in the community.
Is it a big issue in the Jewish community?
It's a huge issue. Well, actually, it's the same as in the general population, which is 1 in 4 Jewish homes are suffering from domestic abuse. Yeah. What's more shocking is that Jewish women stay twice as long in those relationships.
You're kidding me. In other words, if they have an abusive situation, they'll stay, they won't leave as quickly?
That's correct.
Why would that happen with the Jewish community?
Well, there's lots of reasons, but Shalom Bayit, which is peace in the home, has traditionally been the responsibility of the woman. Actually, when my mother was married to my father, she had to take a class, a Shalom Bayit class. So this has traditionally been the role of the woman, to provide peace in the home. So when this is not happening, this creates a lot of shame, a lot of embarrassment,
Yeah.
and it makes it much harder for them to admit there's a problem and to then eventually do something about that.
Yeah, there's more than just verbal abuse. There's a lot more physical abuse. What do they do with the people that are physically abused?
Well, we treat every abuse the same way. So there is a lot of physical abuse. What we try to educate the community about is it's just not about punching and slapping. It could be about physical intimidation, preventing your partner from leaving the room, for example. Or I had a case where a woman was forced to stay up all night long. He prevented her from sleeping, and that is another form.
He made her stay awake all night?
Correct. Made her stay awake all night. So this is another form of physical abuse. What's also very common is the verbal and emotional abuse, financial abuse, sexual abuse. It comes in many, many forms.
Yeah. How do you treat this? Do you have special agencies or special services that you have that you can conduct with these people?
Absolutely. Well, we have counseling services at Albert Jewish Family and Children's Service, so they would receive counseling. We have a support group, and we provide lots of other services for that family, because when a woman or man comes through our domestic abuse program, they have a family, and so we never know what types of services they will need. If we're not able to provide the services,
you'll find something.
We look in the community, and we're able to refer them to the appropriate agencies.
Yeah. How do you hope this thing is going to become minimalized over the years? I mean, what do you do with the young people? How do they know about what they have to look for when they date somebody?
That's a great question. The other part of the domestic abuse program at the agency, we have a prevention program. It's called Relationships and Decisions. It's a teen dating abuse and bullying prevention program. And what we do is we recruit community teens, and we train them and teach them about issues of dating abuse, bullying, self-esteem, what makes a relationship a healthy one, what are some of the warning signs to look for when it's not. And then those teens in turn do workshops or gigs, we call them, to other teens. So it's a peer-to-peer educational program. It's extremely successful, and we're hoping that is helps.
In other words, they play out the role. Is that what you're saying?
Well, these teens are trained in these issues, and then they teach other teens about dating abuse and bullying, and they do that, correct, by different role-playing, different interactive activities that are fun. So the kids and teens that are attending the workshops have a good time, but they're also learning about these very important issues. They don't teach this in school. What is a healthy relationship and what isn't, for example. And it's so important for teenagers to know what's healthy, what isn't, and what to do to get out of these types of relationships.
It's amazing. It's such an embarrassing kind of a situation, because you feel like you're limited in many ways in terms of being a good mother, a good wife.
Yes.
And it's very difficult for the person to come out and say, hey, I need some help.
Absolutely. That's what prevents people from getting help. There's a lot of shame, a lot of embarrassment, a lot of fear. A lot of women in these situations have been told by their partner, you will never see the kids again.
Yeah.
You will never get a penny from me. And these women are so controlled by their partners, they actually believe that, even though you and I know sitting here that
but it's
legally
true.
Correct.
And they get frightened.
And they're scared.
And
they're scared.
So they really look to you for some sort of help. I mean, you're the only one that I know of. I mean, the agency and such.
Well, we're here. There are other community resources, but
do you work together with the other
Absolutely,
agencies?
absolutely. We have relationships with them, and we all work together to try to help educate the community and help these women and some men. 1 out of 9 men are the victim of domestic abuse in the Jewish community as well as the general population. So we really try to encourage people to know that it's not okay and that there is help, and we're here when you're ready.
Yeah. Something, you're amazing.
Thank you.
You were just as enthusiastic last time I interviewed you. But things are improving, I presume.
Well, we have had success stories. I'm working with a woman now who escaped a very brutal situation, and we are helping her with her education, with transportation, with all the things that she needs to really make a new life for herself. So when I see that, it's worth it's just, I love my job, and I'm just really glad that I'm able to, with the agency, we're able to help.
And I see you wearing the scarf of the agency.
Absolutely.
Which is beautiful.
Thank you very much for having me today.
Thank you, dear.
Coming up, we'll speak with a leader from Jewish Federation's Young Women's Group about how she is bringing awareness to domestic abuse in new ways. We're here with Ilana Rickel, who is a lay leader and one of the founding members of the Federation's women's group called Kol Isha. Welcome to Mosaic, Ilana.
Thank you so much.
First of all, please tell our viewers what Kol Isha is.
Kol Isha literally in Hebrew means a woman's voice. And we formed about 4 years ago a group of young women who wanted to get involved in the Jewish Federation. We didn't find a home in any of the other divisions. We wanted to form a collective of young Jewish women who will be the future Lions of Judah, God willing, one day. But for right now, we needed a place to express ourselves, to connect back to the Federation, to give back to this community, and to form a bond with each other.
So what are the age group, or do you have an age group?
So we don't ID at our events.
That's good.
But I would say the average age of our members are in their late 20s to 40s.
Oh,
early
that's
40s.
Wonderful. So you've been involved in different projects, and apparently this year your project is based on abuse and domestic violence.
Yes.
Why did you choose that?
You know, when we first started discussing an issue to dedicate our time and our resources to, we wanted to focus on an issue that affected the Jewish community and specifically women in the Jewish community. When domestic abuse was first suggested to us, we said, well, that happens in everybody else's community. It doesn't happen in our community. I mean, we're the Jewish community. Nothing bad could happen in our community. And we learned, and it was an incredibly eye-opening experience, that domestic abuse actually affects 1 in 4 adults and 1 in 3 teens. And those numbers, it's not just the non-Jewish community, it affects our community as well.
Right.
Regardless of race, religion, socioeconomic level. And we said this is an issue that is so taboo and nobody talks about it. As a cohort of young women, it's up to us to do it, because if not us, nobody else will.
So what have you been doing as part of Kol Isha?
That's a great question. So at events, we've been collecting toiletries. When women escape and try to leave their homes, oftentimes there's nowhere for them to go, and they aren't able to take things like shampoo or razors or toothbrushes. So at every event, we collect these toiletry items, and we've also done education programs. For example, we had a parlor meeting in a home, and we brought in a representative from AJF and CS to speak about domestic abuse. And we have lots of events, lots of different types. We've had recreational events, we've had painting events, fun, but this was a very serious event. And we expected maybe 10 to 15 people. Well, we had over 50 people in somebody's living room to talk about this. And there are some women who came that we've never seen before and that have come to a few programs after, but they came because this was such a serious issue. And as I mentioned before, we never know who domestic abuse affects.
Right, you don't even, maybe it was one of those women you don't know.
Exactly. Or somebody they know, or a family member, or their parents. And so giving young women in the community the opportunity to learn about what it is, what domestic abuse is, how to identify it in yourself, in your relationships, or in a friend or family's relationship, and then showing them the resources that our incredible community has to offer. Very important elements of what we try to do through our programs.
No, and it's very critical that you also become eyes and ears for the community and your peers to assist in that regard.
100%.
What other types of programs do you do at Kol Isha?
We have lots. I love Kol Isha. We have lots of fun programs, but we always have we call it a Fed 5. We always have an element of federation in our event. So even if it's just we're doing a girls painting night at the JCC, we'll take a few minutes at the beginning, the middle, or the end of the program to discuss the Federation's partner agencies, including AJF and CS, the Meyer Academy. Our next event is coming up in a few weeks. We'll be learning Mahjong, and we'll be doing the event at the Meyer Academy. And so we'll begin the event with just a brief overview of what the Meyer Jewish Academy is, the benefits that it provides to our community, and ways for us to give back to make a difference. So we have fun social events, but we always try to connect it back to this is why we're here. Not just to do a wine and cheese tasting, but because we're the future leadership of this community, and it's up to us to learn and to make a difference.
Your passion is so palpable. Could you please tell me where that came from, and how did you become involved in the Federation in the first place?
I grew up here. This is the place where I call home. My parents still live here. I grew up in Palm Beach Gardens, and I grew up going to Meyer Academy, and I went there from kindergarten through 8th grade, and I was involved in the Jewish Teen Initiative through the Federation and JI, and every Jewish teen program you could possibly be involved in growing up in this amazing community. I went away for college, and now that I'm back and I'm an adult, though I don't always feel like one, it's up to me to give back because this community has given me so much. And if I don't give back, there might not be the opportunity for somebody else in the community to benefit from the things that I've benefited from. I'm doing my small part.
No, you're quite an ambassador. You really are. You're a terrific example of what the community has to offer. If you were a viewer watching, how would you advise them to get involved with Kol Isha?
Contact me. My email address is kolisha, KOLISHA, at jewishpalmbeach.org. And I'd be happy to put you in touch with our staff member. I'd be happy to go to coffee or lunch or any way and hear what you're interested in to connect you to this amazing group of young women.
Well, thank you, and you're quite an ambassador. Thank you so much.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Coming up, final thoughts on Mosaic.
You know, Barbara, it's part of our Jewish values to be involved in this issue, and also it is an issue that affects the Jewish community.
Yeah, but we're doing something about it.
We are.
We're getting involved and we're changing it and hopefully making it a better place.
I know we are. And thank you for joining us. We'll see you again next week when we take another look into the Jewish world. Goodbye from Mosaic.